Now, many women have a difficult time during the menopause. You can suffer with hot flushes, night sweats, mood changes, of course. But Sheree Hargreaves was only 15 years old when doctors told her she was already going through the menopause and that she would never be able to have children. She's 19 now and she wants to raise awareness about early menopause. We've also got Dr Sara with us in the studio. Sheree, thank you very much for talking about this, because I'm sure it can't be easy for you. 15 years old when you were diagnosed, but when did you first think something might not be quite right?
So when I was younger, around 13 or 14, all my friends, they all started their periods and started going through puberty and things like that. I wasn't developing in any way or anything like that, and you know, I just thought, oh, there's just something not quite right. So I talked to my mum and I was like, oh, have I, am I going to be late? And she was like, oh, when I was late when I was younger. So I just thought that I was going to be late like my mum. But then when I got to around 15, I thought, I need to go to the doctors now. But when I was younger, I carried around like pads and tampons and things like that just to try and fit in the meantime before I went to the doctors.
Yeah, and we all want to fit in.
It's so interesting, Sheree, because although we think, you know, this must be so rare with you, I'm just looking at the stats. 1 in 10,000 women under 20 will have gone through what you have gone through. And given there are probably, what, about 30 million women in the whole country, that's more than you may imagine, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to talk about it. So you're saying at first you thought, well, my mum was a late developer, you know, you weren't too worried. So at 15, you and your mum went to the doctor and they sent you for a CT scan. Tell us what happened and how you got that diagnosis.
So at first it was quite dramatic because they wanted to rule out like the big things. So they expected something like a tumour, which was quite scary. But after they ruled that out quite quickly, because they wanted to get all the big things out of the way, they did like a simple blood test really, and they found that my FSH levels were really high and my estrogen levels were really low, which indicated the fact that I was going through menopause. And then they did an ultrasound scan to basically confirm the whole fact about my reproductive system.
So huge relief when they said it wasn't cancer, but then when they said this is early menopause, what on earth did you feel then?
Well, I thought I was just a bit like, menopause, like what? I thought just elderly people went through menopause. I was thinking, like, that can't be quite right, because, you know, you think people joke about the whole menopause being like, oh, my mum's having hot flushes or whatever. So when I thought, gosh, I'm 15 and it was suspected that I started menopause when I was like 6 years old, it was just absolutely shocking, confusing, really weird time.
Of course, absolutely, all of those things. And then also they had to tell you that because of that you would be infertile and not be able to have children. That must have been very difficult to hear.
Yeah, when you're a child yourself, you don't really think about obviously having kids or whatever, but it's like giving a chocolate bar to a kid and then being like, oh, you can't have it anymore. That's all you want. So it was quite difficult to come to terms with things like that. But science nowadays so good. Wow. So there's so many options out there, and adoption as well.
Sheree, unfortunately, you're now an expert on all of this, and to explain your story and the condition, primary ovarian insufficiency, we've got Dr Sara here. Sara, tell us more.
Well, on average, people go through the menopause when they're 45 to 55, but, you know, most people around 51. If you happen to go through the menopause before the age of 45, that's when it's considered early menopause or primary ovarian failure. Now, it's when your body is no longer able to produce the hormones that it's required to sustain your reproductive system. And as a result, you can go through all of the same symptoms as you would as you're going through the menopause. So change in your periods, eventually they'll stop, hot flushes, night sweats. But you can also get other system issues, so heart disease, bone loss, osteoporosis. And those are all things that we need to manage in addition to the actual menopause itself. Yeah.
Well, I recognise all those symptoms, but I wouldn't have liked to have been having them when I was 15 years old. Sheree, how has that been? Tell us about the symptoms that you have and how that affects you in your young life. You're a student now.
Yeah, so, sorry. So I'm currently studying at uni, so it's quite difficult in the day-to-day life sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'm on top form, you know, I can go out and enjoy myself and spend time with friends, but sometimes I do have to take that like grandma time and just recharge my batteries. And definitely in lectures and things, all my friends are like, oh, you're not cold, because I'm wearing t-shirts and short sleeves and whatever. But I'm like, no, honestly, if you felt the temperature. But yeah, I wear like summer clothes in the winter and just carry around a jumper.
And what about medication, Sheree? Are you on any HRT, for example?
Yeah, so I started out straight away at 15 with estrogen to promote puberty. And then when I was 17, I did start my period, which is great. And since then, recent ultrasound scan says that my uterus is fully grown, which is perfect, and everything like that is great. So I could carry a child, obviously with egg donation. So that's fantastic news.
That's interesting, Sarah, because, you know, in many ways, a lot of people would think their life is in many ways written off, but there is hope, there is treatment, obviously.
Well, of course, you can treat it with hormone replacement. We also need to make sure we're treating that bone loss through taking things like calcium, vitamin D. But if you are wanting to start a family, yes, egg donation is a possibility. So is adoption. And so there are lots of other options out there. But of course, it's going to have a psychological impact on you. And of course, if you are feeling low in mood, anxious, any of those kind of things, you do need to speak to someone, talking therapy, support groups.
Yeah. Well, listen, you seem to be dealing with it so well, Sheree. I know, you know, reading so much about you, it's been very difficult for you. But I know that you've got an Instagram page now. You talk to a lot of women, lots of older women, actually, and help them and give them advice.
Yeah, so many people have reached out to me. When you're a teenager and you find out something like that, you definitely feel like you're the only one. You'll definitely make it really dramatic in your head, but you're not the only one. I mean, I'm proof that obviously it happens to young people, and there's so many people on Instagram. I mean, that's why I set up my Instagram, because I thought when I was 15, I would have absolutely loved for someone to be on Instagram talking about it really openly, or going to schools or sex education example. Yeah. But yeah, that's why I set up my Instagram, because there's so many.
Yeah, it's fantastic that you do that to help other people. Like you said, you know, it's good to talk to other people who really understand, and you're doing a great job with that. Sheree, thank you so much for talking to us today. And
thank you.
You know,
thank you.
If somebody now is listening to that thinking, oh, actually, I'm very late with my periods, and should they see the GP?
Absolutely. If you're getting any of those kind of symptoms, you see your GP. It's very simple to blood test. You just need to get 2 of them. And so it's something we can very easily help you with.
OK, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.